Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. The long-awaited roundtable that is now upon us. The only thing that we're going to miss with it being here is more videos from the enthusiastic Mr. Orendorff and all his mannerisms and wonderful videos that have been inundating every feed that we could possibly access to get you all here. Because one, we really believe that this is an incredibly important topic for most of us running e-commerce businesses. Q4 coming up represents in a lot of cases upward of 50 or more % of our revenue. And simultaneously, this is one of the most chaotic, wild, unpredictable years we've ever encountered as a human species, let alone from a business standpoint. Everything from it being an election year to a global pandemic, e-commerce exploding in the midst of all of it. How do you possibly sort out what to do in this time? And the answer that we've come up with is to bring together an incredible group of guides to help offer us some direction in the fog, if you will. And so we are super excited to have everybody here today. We're really thankful to everyone who submitted questions. In terms of format for what we're going to be doing for the next hour is we have built this around the questions that you have submitted. So there's going to be three real core parts that we're going to go through. The first is some e-commerce trends, again, built off the back of questions that you all submitted. And then we're going to be talking about demand forecasting, perhaps the single greatest, most referenced topic and question that we got was how do we possibly predict into this environment? And then each of our hosts here today are going to be providing their single most practical best takeaway they can for you going in to the holiday season. So with that, as we stated in the emails, the replay will be sent to you immediately following, as well as you will get early access to our Cyber Monday, Black Friday case studies and information research that's going to be coming out. So you'll get week early access. It includes 435 different examples from brands of things that they did last year, as well as trends that we're seeing in some of our own research here at CTC. So thank you all for coming. We're so stoked. I want to go ahead and just do quick introductions of all of our esteemed guests here today. The first, unfortunately, is the ghost of Helena Hambrecht, who's out sick today. So we're super bummed that she wasn't able to make it. She sends her well wishes to you, hopefully from her bed feeling better soon. Second, we have Jack Meredith, the VP of Marketing at Kettle and Fire. If you all don't follow or aren't aware of Kettle and Fire, Jack and his team are some of the most incredible tactical e-commerce marketers that I've ever come across. So super excited to have Jack. Jaime Schmidt, who is only not any longer an operator because she has already been through the process of building an empire and selling it and is now off helping many others do the same. She's the founder of Schmidt's Naturals and Supermaker author. Additionally, we have Jake Cohen, the director of product marketing at Klaviyo, who has been going as hard on data and research and trends as anybody in our industry, and he's here to share some of that wisdom with us today. We've got Jeremy Kai, the CEO and founder of Italic, who has recently just launched their new sort of version of Italic and what they're going to be doing as a very interesting iteration of what could represent a piece of D2C 3.0, if you will. We've got Jessica McGlory, the head of growth from Verb Energy, here to share all of her wisdom and energy with us. So super excited to have you, Jessica. We've got Marco Marandiz, the Ecommerce DTC Strategist, futurist, and king of the Twitter thread breakdown. We've got Marjorie Chelius, the director of user acquisition at Native, here with us to give us insights on everything that one of everyone's favorite e-com brands is up to as they think about holiday. We've got Taylor Sicard, the co-founder of Win Brands Group, who's a holding company that owns a number of different brands in the space. And so he has a really wide view of different things that are happening across a variety of different products. We've got Tracey Wallace, head of marketing at Eterneva, and also probably celebrating a little bit of a big commerce market explosion today, maybe. I don't know. We'll see. And then we've got Trey Sisson, the co-founder and COO of BABOON to the Moon, who is one of the most creative, insightful people that you will come across, and he's filming himself on a drone today. You can see that angle that he's got looking down at all of us. And then at some point when class gets out for Webb, who I think is in the middle of class right now, he's going to be jumping to join us as well. Webb Smith, the founder and editor in chief of 2 p.m. So that is the esteemed guest. Holy cow, what a list. Incredible group that we have here today. So let's go ahead and jump in. So the first question that really came out to us was around this e-commerce adoption explosion and what this trend means for the future. So the question that I want to pose to you, Jake, to start is this. Everybody, all the different sources agree that 2020 saw a significant lift in e-commerce penetration. But I can't get a clear picture of exactly how much percent increase and how lasting any guidance as we start to think about what we're currently experiencing and what that means for the future?
Yeah, it's a fascinating question. Frankly, I've spent probably too much time thinking about it. Before I get in, I want to say this is a super awesome panel and a huge shout out to our host, CTC, for being as data interested, curious, and sharing as they are, and be collecting everyone here. So thanks for having us. This has actually been a super interesting year as it relates to e-com penetration. We did some back of the envelope math based on what we've seen in the front half of the year. For everyone else who may not know, Klaviyo, we serve mostly e-commerce businesses. We've looked at data of about 30,000 brands around the world, organized and indexed by what country they're in, by time series, what category they're in, all this kind of stuff to try and basically understand what's happening and share that out to the world so people have a sense and have some confidence on what's going to happen. What we ultimately found is that at the peak of growth around, in April, sales were up about 100% year over year and are kind of settling down to 50, 60% year over year above what we'd expect. When we looked at the projected trends that we saw comparing last year now to Black Friday, Cyber Monday, and taking even a conservative increase based on what we wouldn't know now, we actually think that in sum, this year will be the very first year that e-commerce as an industry is going to see over $1 trillion in sales from the United States. In fact, it'll be 1.1 trillion. For context, last year it was about 600 billion. So we're predicting an 83% increase year over year. And before that is 500 billion. So in 2 years, we think it's going to double, which is nuts. The interesting thing is to think about that in the context of overarching retail spending. Right now, retail spending is down 6% in the US compared to the period before COVID. And obviously, as I mentioned, e-com's up 60%. So right now, I think penetration's something like 32, 33%, up from 15% last year. I actually think that Black Friday this year is going to be bigger this year nominally than it will be next year. So when we look back in a couple of years and look at the charts, we're going to see a spike and it'll come a little bit back to earth. And I think settle at about 23% of overall retail spending going to e-commerce. So there's a whole bunch of reasons to why I think that's going to be the case and why, frankly, that might be a low number at 1.1 trillion, but that's what's going to happen. So buckle your seatbelts.
That's awesome. And Jake is currently taking bets on that over-under too. So if you haven't followed, he's like, so if you don't believe him, there's money to be made. So hit him up on that, because that on Twitter, he's taking all takers on those numbers. So he's confident. Awesome. So Jaime, take all of those numbers that were just thrown at us by Jake and all the implications, and speak to business owners about how they respond to that in light of what he's saying, and feel free to disagree with what he's saying, but in terms of how they then apply that knowledge to business tactics and preparation, how do they think about that?
Well, I do have to challenge people to think about the omni-channel approach. D2C is 2020, right? Like there's no disputing. We've just heard the numbers. But if you've heard me talk about, my path to success with Schmidt's and what I look for in brands that I invest in, it's a clear plan for an omni approach. And I think even if it's not going to be successful today, maybe we're not landing shelf space in Target right now, it's having a plan to do it. It's being able to speak to a plan to do it, and just understanding that if we're not thinking that way, then our competition is. With Schmidt's, my approach was always to say yes to every channel. Maybe that means diversifying your product offerings. We have to think about things like margins and pricing, and that's a whole separate conversation, but it's doable. And I think that every brand should be thinking about it, especially because D2C is becoming so increasingly competitive. There's a lot of conversation about Brands can't be discovered when they're in stores, but there are a lot of customers who are only discovering brands in stores. So I think that that's equally important.
How do you think about, and just as a quick follow-up, like in terms of physical stores, what do you think that discovery is going to look like in holiday this year?
Yeah, I think a lot of the stores are obviously moving online. We've seen Target and Walmart making preparations for a different type of Black Friday. But I think there's real opportunity for brands to partner up with some of these retailers. There's in-store circulars, for example, that often get overlooked. With Schmidt's, that was an avenue that I took advantage of frequently for promotion, is the in-store, the coupons, the circulars that the DC brands aren't looking at. So I think there's real opportunity there.
That's great. And so I want to stay on this for a second. I know this is the D2C panel, but I think that one of the things that you're going to hear throughout this is that agility, diversification is part of how we diffuse risk going into such an unpredictable environment. And we got this great question about some of the things that are happening from the big players. Amazon's delaying Prime Day, Target, Walmart, and now Kohl's won't be open on Thanksgiving. Major retailers are trying to spread out the holiday seasons, and that probably means a lot of new money into online advertising. So one, and Jessica, I'm going to come to you for this question to start, is should we adjust our usual holiday timelines? Maybe that was usually for us, maybe it was the Wednesday to Monday and that peak Cyber Monday. Are we spreading that out further in terms of our email prospecting and remarketing? And what do you see happening to ad costs as a result of some of those decisions by those big retailers?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that in terms of the holiday window, it's going to be a little all over the place. Last year, I remember everyone freaking out by how late Black Friday was, and people just didn't want to adjust that shorter window from when they would have to buy to when your last cutoff ship date was. But for the purposes of kind of understanding of how much competition is coming into the digital landscape and how much money is going to be getting infused into this holiday system, it's understanding fundamentally how the bigger brands work. They all do their fiscal year, right? They break down exactly what's happening for their marketing budget, and they do not adjust. It might adjust downward slightly, but really at the end of the day, it's more they've just been pushing it back and making it lower and lower per quarter, so that in Q4, it'll be like we have to spend it or it goes away. So with that, traditionally we see bigger brands starting earlier anyway. And usually you're able to compete from an online standpoint because most of the dollars goes towards them pushing towards in-store shopping, because that's generally how they're going to be able to push greater AOV is by in-store. But now they're going to be pushing all of this extra money that they have for digital, and some will still be pushing for in-store, but from the digital landscape, it's going to be very intense. So any D2C that wants to have a chance at survival with these increased ad costs, which really, I wouldn't be surprised with some of the major channels like Facebook, like Google, seeing the likes of, 2 to 3 times what we might see during this time period of an already increased price. Just looking at these sort of ebbs and flows of the influx of cash that's coming across all sectors that need to make up that lost revenue. So the main key thing to do is you might want to start thinking about starting early, but I also make the recommendation of starting to think about what you're going to do in a little bit later, right before the ship cutoffs happen. It's going to be a shipping war. So, and no D2C pretty much underneath the sun can compete with being able to get that 2-day shipping. If we thought it was bad before, it is going to be astronomical with everyone trying to get the last minute shoppers who literally can't go into a store. Their only option will be online. What does that happen if you aren't offering gift cards, if you aren't offering some sort of reason or incentive for people to buy early? Any D2C that hasn't put that into their strategy and really thinking about it right now is probably in some trouble.
That's great. So I have a question. So in terms of the price, so part of the premise is that big brands are going to be reallocating dollars into an environment that drives CPMs up. We've got simultaneously Jake talking about this sort of revolutionary demand increase on e-commerce. Is it enough to offset? Is the conversion rate and the demand increase going to be enough to offset and maintain profitability even against rising CPMs? Or do you think it's going to break and that margin is going to get pinched?
I think it's going to break. Personally, I'm a big proponent that most DTCs, like bigger brands are going to be fine. Honestly, they'll likely be able to just kind of keep, spraying these huge budgets and figure out what that means for them. It might just be a less efficient year, but that's nothing compared to DTCs that depend on efficiency. And with that being said, it's more of just an understanding of, okay, that you're not going to be able to match this efficiency. The margins are going to be tighter. Organic is going to be critical. Really making sure that you get as robust as possible email lists going into Q4 is going to be critical. So you can try to leverage that as much as possible. Really building up, if some people, Verb, we're actually very lucky from our organic social. We actually don't have the problem where it's like the lack of reach means insignificant traffic. We actually get a very good amount of traffic from our Instagram that converts at a very high rate. So we're trying to drive up followers that are meaningful as much as possible with great content and really engaging and building a community. Relying on having organic be the way to help cut down the cost of what's going to happen in the landscape, because the landscape is not going to do anyone any favors, and shipping cost isn't going to do anyone any favors. Really, everything else is going to likely be so expensive. The only thing is really looking at how you can help push your organic channels and then diversify your paid channels as well. Facebook, of course, is still huge for most D2Cs. Google is huge for a lot of D2Cs. But there is something to be said about the lower CPMs and the lower CPCs and traffic you can get from the Snapchats, from the TikToks of the world. We're seeing success. I've seen success with being able to drive that sort of traffic and then capturing email lists and then going from there to get the conversions. But that will be pretty critical.
It's great. So again, you hear it again, right? In terms of diversity of channel for distribution, diversity of traffic. These are all mechanisms to ensure you're not over leveraged. Jake, looked like you wanted to add something real fast.
I just want to throw one piece in there. I agree, Jessica, with everything you just said, with one little nuance difference. When we looked at all the numbers across our 30, 40,000 brands, what we learned from last year is that 60% of sales came from profiles that had a relationship with the brand from Q3 or earlier. So to your point of getting early and investing in acquisition now to build that list so that you don't have to pay for the right to communicate with them at the time of increased competition when brands are big box retailers are desperately trying to get the word out, you're going to be able to actually make up for some of the economics that you're trying to, you're suffering later on with all that competition. So I agree with you. I think if brands can listen to what you're saying and get started now, they're going to end up having a really, really, really profitable and good Q4.
No doubt. Owned audience creation now is revenue later. Like period, full stop. So Taylor, Sicard, I want to come to you. And a lot of them that I know, Q4 is massive for you. So as you about this, what is the feeling that you get and how are you sort of planning against that environment?
Yeah, I mean, to echo what both Jessica and Jake said, Q4 is hypercritical for every business, regardless of, historical revenue from previous years. On Jessica's point around these big box retailers coming online, I agree with it, but I think it's going to be potentially even worse than what we are currently expecting, because I do think that there's the opportunity for these companies to, pay more for customer acquisition than that initial first purchase buyback, like payback that we would be expecting as a direct consumer brand. And then littering them with the same way they send like the mail, the flyers in the mail every single week. They're going to send you an email, and all of a sudden they don't need that square footage. They don't have to worry about inventory. Their warehouses are endless. They have everything they could ever need. And then that for them becomes a much more efficient channel for them to grow and to scale. So I am aware and fearful of that, but I do think, also to echo her point, there's no time like the present. The best time for us to start capturing and building our list was yesterday or last year, or 5 years ago. And I think, for me anyway, I look at it as not necessarily the platform, the lead capture tool. Those are all irrelevant, for lack of better words. I prefer Klaviyo. That's what I use in all of my stores, obviously. But there are 10 ESPs out there, more than 10 ESPs out there. They all have the same basic functions. Doesn't matter what tools you have, it's how you use them. Klaviyo, for me, I think has the best tools, for my arsenal, because it's very easy to build a flow, test the logic, and then apply that to multiple storefronts for scalability, which is what my team requires. I really look at, when it comes to Q4 for my brands, I'm looking for efficiency. And Q1, 2, and 3, that efficiency is really looking at customer acquisition cost relative to average order value. But when I actually start to get closer to Q4, and I've started doing this over the last probably 60 to 90 days, is looking at how efficiently can I acquire a phone number or an email address? Because I know that those are going to pay dividends come Q4. In addition to that, also looking at how cheap can I get traffic to my website? Because as of, I think, a month ago, Facebook Pixel has already started, the Facebook Pixel is going to be relevant come November. And that's the most critical time for that audience is, going after a targeted person or group of people. The spray and pray method that we used for most of the year can be very effective, but not come Q4, not in the most competitive Q4 we'll ever have. So this year is definitely going to be the test of time for a lot of brands. And, hopefully from this roundtable, we're going to be able to give a few tips and hopefully give the direction so that people start thinking now versus come October, which is when a lot of direct consumer brands start thinking about what they're doing for holiday.
Yeah. So just to hit on the point that you just made, the website, when you say the pixel starts tracking, it's a 180-day window on website custom audiences, gives us 6 months of traffic to add into your remarketing bucket. And to go to Jake's point, one of the things we know about holidays, it's not actually much of a discovery period. It's actually disproportionately people buying things that they're aware of at the best possible price or for gifts that they trust. It's not personal discovery time anymore. So your pixel audience, like an email database, like an SMS database, is an added asset that you begin to aggregate as you move into that window. Marjorie, I want to come to you. What is Native doing with your calendar in terms of, are you thinking beyond Black Friday, Cyber Monday? And you have some massive expectations on a brand that's growing like crazy. Like, how are you guys handling that as you get ready to prep for this crazy Q4?
Yeah. So just to hit on the point again, because I think it's so important, we are taking advantage of seasonal buying, right, in terms of media. So we're leaning in even now, right, going back to March and April when media costs were really low to help build up that email list. And we're also thinking about how do we protect that email list, right, make sure that the content we're sending out is actually retaining that volume, right, because we don't want a lot of drop-offs between then and now. The second thing on calendar, so we are not moving up our seasonal launches of our holiday products. Novelty scents and seasonal scents for our deodorant is always been a big part of the business, and we're not changing that timeline, but we are changing the timeline of how we roll it out. So by that, I mean, we're not launching any sooner, but we are going to do more of a phased, staggered approach, right? So we're launching a bundle of holiday products, a candy cane deodorant, a sweet cookies trio. And instead of launching all at once as a holiday bundle, we're using that staggered newness to always stay front of mind, stay front of attention, right? Drive that higher quality in our advertising, which is ultimately, the bet we're making is going to win more auctions. So how do you think about like a phased approach in a time when everybody's attention and everybody's eyeballs are being so aggressively, bid on? How do you make sure that you're staying top of mind? The third thing, to the point you were making about how do you protect your margins, the other thing that we're doing this year is we're really thinking about how do we structure the holiday products that we're launching in a way that builds in the fact that everybody's going to be going after this consumer set online, right? So how do we bundle them, right? How do we make it so that our value add or our +1 free item that you're getting still makes sense from a financial unit economic standpoint? So starting that planning now, so we're prepped in the future should those media costs be higher, which we're planning again because retail, the bet we're making, it's still going to be a lot lower.
Great, thanks. So we've a bunch of people have touched on alternative sort of strategies, whether it's email, audience capture, native organic strategies from Jessica in terms of what they're driving on social. I want to now go to a couple of conversations related to that, to thinking outside of the alternative primary distribution methodologies that we have. And Jeremy, I'm going to start with you because you have a business that is fundamentally trying to do it a different way and also cannot depend on promotion as a lever for you to pull going into holiday. So maybe for people that don't know yet, give a little context for what is your sort of setup of Italic, and then how do you think about holiday in light of that?
Yeah, so we launched this, I think 2 weeks ago. So the pitch isn't perfect, so bear with me. But basically, Italic is a $100 membership that we pay. Our members pay upfront, and in return, our members get access to hundreds of products that we design and develop from scratch at the price points where we don't profit on them whatsoever. So it's basically at cost, and our profit is purely capped at the $100. So I think in terms of thinking about both acquisition in general, but holidays, it's actually become a lot simpler because we have one single product. It's a digital product. It's $100, basically pure margin, and we can spend into that. And the goal, of course, is to be profitable on first order, like I'm sure everyone is here. But we also the goal is to retain our members so that they stick with us for years to come. Which is a little bit different than your standard transactional model. So I guess in terms of holidays, I thought I would have something unique to say, but to be honest with you, I think everyone's already kind of covered a lot of this. I think the main takeaway for us, and we've experienced this over the past couple of years, but it's frankly it's tough to compete during the holidays. It's not something that we actually want to do. So what we do is exactly kind of what Jake and Jessica and Taylor were kind of alluding to. And also we have a little bit of what Marjorie was touching on, which is we spend actually very aggressively in Q3. So, August, September are big months for us. And we're really trying to build our lists during then. And then basically through the extent of holiday season, we're generally using paid only for retargeting by then. There's some days that we really like. So for example, December 26th, I think I shouldn't actually say this because I think some people might start running ads then, but I think it's one of the best days in the year to run ads. Black Friday, even though CPMs are high, we're still seeing pretty strong conversions then. That was on the transactional model. I think, we just launched this new membership, which is basically the new business model. So I think it's to be determined if that'll be successful to convert then. I think the two areas which I think people already alluded to, but are really helpful to think about is, I think there's a consideration period. So for us, we're not we realized over time, we're not a product or any of our products aren't products that people will purchase immediately. It's something that typically you'll sign up and then we'll nurture you over the course of maybe typically 3 to 4 weeks. And then we see conversions hit then, which is a lot longer period than say something that you'll buy immediately or a lower price point. So I think for us, it's important to keep that in mind and make sure that we're doing our list nurturing. And then I think in the second part, our incentive is to acquire new members and also to retain existing members. And one way we do that is through building a product assortment that is quite exciting for people to kind of stick around, or they see something that eventually makes them want to convert. So we're actually trying to normalize some seasonality by kind of launching seasonal specific products. So for example, in summer, we're actually trying to amp up our summer specific product assortment. So it's not as dependent on Q4, but even in Q4, a lot of those products become then, exciting for gifting. So I think in terms of building our product assortment, we're teeing up a lot of launches to happen during Q4 to go out to the list that we built in Q3 and prior. So it's going to be, this is the first year we're going to try this, but that's what our plan is.
Great. So Marco, I want to come to you and I want to keep on this idea of sort of new models, new ways to reach customers. And the question that we got was, does D2C 3.0 exist? Is that a thing? And what about native social brands? Is it just about doing more organic stuff, influencer collabs, or are there new models? Is Otis and Italic and all these other people finding other ways to reach customers in new ways? What are you seeing and what is possible for people to consider, Marco?
Yeah, so I've been thinking about this a lot, actually. I don't know if D2C 3.0 is a thing, but I do see that there's a big transition from the website being the primary channel for how you make transactions. A lot of people invest a lot of money and time into building your your e-commerce site, and then you're driving traffic to it through ads and organic, and then you're trying to optimize your conversion rate from 2.1 to 2.2%. And it's a heavy lift, but I think what we're going to see is the emergence of influencers being collaborators with brands. So they already have the distribution figured out. They know how to speak to their audience. We're going to see a lot more of that. And the technology that we're using right now is very much like, it works very well, but it's not necessarily catered to driving revenue through social channels in an organic manner. So I think we're going to see a lot more drops as a business model. I think drops will be a bigger part of the revenue mix for direct consumer businesses. So it won't just be, there will be businesses, let's say Glossier will do all of their 95% of their revenue on their website, but they will probably start doing drops for specific things to a specific demographic, partnering with specific influencers. So I think we're seeing a lot more of that, where the idea of a website is actually going to become less relevant, and social media channels, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, those are going to be a lot more powerful for driving sales directly from that to a specifically built site to make a sale. There won't be the whole lifestyle photography and product descriptions and all of that stuff that we're trying to optimize for. I think that's going to shift a lot more towards using social media channels as as your landing page, and very simple transactional experiences for commerce. So I think that is maybe not 3.0, but it's the next iteration of this, because most people are deciding to buy things when they see the ad, when they see the influencer, when they see the content. That's when they make the decision to purchase. And the rest of it is just vetting it. But if you're already bought in on an influencer, you already bought in that this celebrity is going to sell me this hoodie, then I don't really care. Just let me buy it. And this whole play of like scarcity and hype with drops, I think that is going to be a lot more influential, especially for, I think what Jessica was talking about was like, we're seeing all of this, we're going to see a lot more ad spend from traditional companies spending all of their remaining budget at the end of the year. There's going to be a very noisy advertising channel across the internet. So how do you cut through that? It's going to have to be more socially oriented. It's going to be through opt-in channels versus I'm trying to avoid advertising and get through my day on Instagram. And oh, well, there's another product. So I think the paradigm will shift, and that will become more clear over the next couple of years.
That's great. Really good stuff. All right. I want to click over to a creative conversation. So I think one of the most difficult challenges facing all of us is figuring out how on earth we message into this environment. We're going to be coming out of an election, dealing with possible chaos in lots of different directions, challenges related to customer service, all sorts of discussions around what is an appropriate tone for the moment that we're in. So I'm going to give that monumental task to two of the best creatives I know. Tracey, starting with you, this is the question we got. It feels harder than ever to figure out what to do from a creative messaging standpoint. Like, should we be serious? Should we be funny? Do people want escapism and levity, or do they want gravity? Then it's like, what's the response going to be if we try to push something big on a Black Friday sale? Like, what do you say to people as they consider their tone and messaging going into holiday?
Yeah, for sure. Hi, everybody. So I work at a memorial company, and so we deal with grief on our social media channels and see incredible success. We've actually had quite a few people more recently post about us on TikTok and then push back to our Instagram as like our landing page, and then our website becomes like mid-funnel. It's super fascinating, but I will say if we can do it, anybody can do it, because we are talking about something that is incredibly challenging to talk about, especially on social channels. But one of the things that we did about a year ago was set up a customer advisory board. So that had about 10 people in it at first, and it has grown over time. We have about 100 in there now. And we often post things in there to those folks, especially stuff that is kind of maybe close to a line or, you know, whatever it might be. But we work really, really closely with that advisory board to help us figure out exactly what it is that we need to be saying on a variety of different social channels. And then, of course, we have different mixes and different messages for each channel. So Instagram is younger than our Facebook audience. We don't have a TikTok, but those folks are way younger. They're talking about us over there already. We've also been trying out Pinterest, and that is seeing incredible results, both from an organic standpoint and from a paid standpoint. So yeah, honestly, we are talking to our customers, recording the conversations and using the words back at them to help find more folks.
We may have to stop this webinar and have you explain how you make money on Pinterest, because I think you're the first person I've ever heard say that. So that we may just shut this webinar down and kick it to you for that. But thank you. All right, Trey, you guys have a very specific brand. I think you describe it as maximalist in a minimalist world. How do you think about how you're positioned to communicate going into Q4 amongst all this chaos?
Yeah, it's been an interesting year, obviously, right? So when it comes to messaging in the moment and thinking about your tone of voice, it's become sort of a day-to-day exercise now, where it used to be a sort of seasonal thing, or revolving around certain holidays or time periods throughout the year. So I think the key for us and what we think about it is just being flexible and being nimble, and like Tracey said, listening to your customers, right? So COVID being sort of the perfect almost test case, right, for how to react quickly and listen to what customers are saying, and also see what other brands are doing. So, we just went through Memorial Day holiday and July 4th holiday, typically promotional heavy time periods of the year for DTC brands. And that messaging definitely was a big shift for probably everyone on this panel, right? And so I think it's like taking cues, like making sure you're not doing something that's, tone deaf. And certainly, you can plan ahead as much as you want, but you have to be willing to stop things and change in the moment. And from a product standpoint, we're a travel brand primarily, right? And that's obviously been tremendously impacted with COVID. And so we've made some minor adjustments along the way to focus on smaller products and talk about, making road trips instead of plane travel, things like that. And as we think ahead to Q4, from a gifting perspective, this is a bit of an unusual example, but one of the things that we're keeping in the back of our mind is, and it may be a bit optimistic, but back to school has a very different feeling this year, right? So right now there's a bit of that back to school messaging, but there actually may be an opportunity for a newer additional moment of back to school in late December and January. For many people, that may be the first time that they're actually going back to school, right? So it's being aware of these moments, tying them to, the products that you're selling and trying to make it relevant. Taylor, you always say this, like, why does this customer need your product right now in this moment? And more than ever, that's super important.
Yeah, that's a great point. The second back to school. I know that's the one I'm waiting for at home with 3 little kids that are yelling outside of my door. So that's super interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Good call out there, Trey. All right, we're going to move into now a topic around demand forecasting, and I'm going to quote a submission here. So forgive me for the language, but I think this encapsulates the tone of what everyone's feeling. The question we got is simply, how the fuck do you plan for a year like this from an inventory standpoint? And Jack, you're the lone square left to contribute here, so we'll just let you solve this one for us. How are you guys thinking about forecasting into this environment?
Oh boy. Yeah, there's not an easy answer. So for context, Kettle and Fire, we're a CPG company. We make bone broth. And back in March, when the coronavirus was really getting bad, what we saw was a stockpiling event, right? Everyone was freaking out, going to the stores, stockpiling on goods and everything. And we were not ready for that at all. And our sales were through the roof, and we just couldn't keep up with demand. And so that was a very rocky experience for our team. And so from that, we decided that we needed to really dial in our demand forecasting for unforeseen events like this. So my recommendation for everyone is to work with your team to try to set up like a task force or like a brain trust that meets, on an ongoing basis. For us, it was during that time period is once a week, to where it was myself, members from our finance team, members from our operations and logistics team, and we spent that full hour just going through each SKU, understanding what the inventory available was for both DTC, Amazon, retail as well, and tried to make the best decisions on the information that we had. And that information included, our internal metrics, whether it's, what we're seeing from a trending standpoint on DTC and Amazon. Also, if you're in retail, you have access to spends data. If you're in CPG, so we look at that. And then we try our best to kind of piece together the macro trends that we were seeing to make our best guess at what demand could look like. And for us, the other tricky thing is that given that the consumer good, we have to plan our inventory production out 12 weeks. So we're making decisions that are going to affect us 12 weeks from now, which makes things even more difficult. But I think the reality is that it's. I'm not going to sit up here and say like, oh yeah, you need to do X, Y, and Z. This is what's going to happen, because this is something that's never really happened in our lifetimes. So I think the big thing is to really have that task force in place to where you're routinely checking in, seeing all the trending data, how the year is going, what you think is going to happen in the next couple of months, and try your best to predict from there. Take into consideration all the factors in regards to cash flow and how much inventory you can hold on hand, stuff like that. You want to be very mindful of, so you don't, be in a really unfortunate position once all the dust settles from Black Friday.
Makes total sense. I love the idea. One of the things that we talk about all the time is the best available truth. What is our best available truth for the future? And tools like the data that Jake and team compile, what we have at CTC. I saw Casey and the ShipBob team just put out an awesome tool on the delay of shipping by provider. Aggregating all of that, having a place in a team that's responsible for monitoring and updating the implications for you is great. So I want to come to Marjorie and Taylor Sicard, because there's something unique about your businesses that you described that I think potentially increases inventory risk, and that is holiday-specific SKUs and products. So as you think about that, how do you think about trying to make decisions where, when and if you're wrong, the inventory may not be as useful for somebody who has an evergreen SKU? What do you do with that, and how are you all considering that as an issue? Marjorie, I'll start with you.
Sure. So a couple things here. First and foremost, we try to prioritize our wholesale customers as much as we can, right? Because there's a lot less of an inventory risk from that perspective. The second thing is I think Jack touched on this, but we're making sure that we are very grounded in the reality of what is today, right? So previously, where we might have looked at previous holiday periods, use that as a forecasting tool, we are looking at, past few weeks run rate and evaluating, also how many people are going to the store, right? So like taking the information in today's new reality and applying that to our demand forecasting. I think the other point that I want to make here that is sometimes overlooked is, you're not going to be ready for everything. There's going to be situations where you run out of something, right? Or your shipping is delayed. So making sure that in advance you have the protocols and the process to follow when that does happen, right? So for native, what that looks like is making sure that we're agile enough to be pulling any marketing spend behind things that are quick to run out, right? Because we're always going to prioritize our subscription customers, making sure that we have that protocol, making sure that if we do run out of a SKU, we can be sending people to a different one that is addressing that same consumer need or consumer delight. So I think having that plan in place gives you a lot of the cushion should things hit the fan. But again, to answer your original question, we, first and foremost, try and work that with our wholesale retail customers, right? Because there's a little bit less of an inventory risk there. And then two, using the reality that we have today, last week, this week, right, to plan some of that demand forecasting.
You're doing this across a portfolio of brands with variable risk across all of them. Are there any specific tools, tactics that you guys use to help make these decisions? And if so, what are they?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think one of the main things that our operations team does, because we are still very lean, is we make sure that we're like triaging what are the SKUs that we know are going to give us problems, right? So instead of trying to focus on how do we get the demand forecast absolutely perfect across our entire portfolio, how do we zone in on those SKUs that either A, have a longer lead time, or B, have a inventory that can't be replenished, and how do we triage those and get really specific there in terms of planning for the demand forecasting. So that's something that's helped our team. And then I'll also make the point here, it's an unsexy process, but it is so important to do postmortems. This has been hugely helpful to our team across the board, especially syncing up our cross-functional teams when it comes to marketing and operations and production, because it's really that synergy that helps protect you. And, a lot of that basic foundational work of understanding how everything works together and what is the level of support you're going to put behind some of these SKUs that's really been, most helpful to our business.
Great. And Taylor, you want to add on to that?
Yeah. There is no perfect way of doing this. This is a lot of, I would say, calculated risks is probably the best way to think about demand planning and forecasting. So what I would say is look at previous years, Q4, and specifically Black Friday, Cyber Monday period. Look at how, July year over year trended. How is August year over year trending? And try and get some sort of cadence as to what direction you're moving in going into holiday. I would then put together, and keeping in mind, obviously, cash flow and a whole bunch of other logistical issues that come with this, but then look at what are the main contributors? And for my brands, it's typically customer acquisition cost as well as inventory levels. So make almost like a bell curve and say what is the risk if we're short on inventory? What is the risk if we're, flush with inventory? And then where's the sweet spot that we want to be? And then do the delta and say, okay, customer acquisition cost. If it's here, this is what we're comfortable. This would be amazing. This would be terrible. And then try and, as much as you can, put these together to then try and, come up with some sort of estimate of, okay, this is where I think we would be comfortable based on the trends, based on risk profile, and then also based on cash flow. Because there's so many variables that come with this. And if you're able to take a bigger chance on inventory, have a plan for what you do with it afterwards. Is there a post-Christmas sale, or can you slap a different label on something? That's a pretty good solution. And also think about demand forecasting. There are people who do this as a contractor, kind of data analysts as a service in some cases. A very worthwhile hire if you're running a scalable business. I don't know what the number would be, maybe $5+ million, or how much volume goes through the Q4 period. But in my case, we brought one on in 2020, and in 2019 we sold out of our holiday SKUs in October. Oh. And that was not the ideal situation, but it was great for holiday because we sold through other stuff that we had on reserve for Q1. So we sold supplemental inventory, which was great.
Taylor, can I just add one more point to that in terms of what Native does? It reminded me, a tactic that's been pretty successful for us in terms of moving some of that inventory that's either out of season, right, didn't sell through as well, is positioning it as vintage, right? So it's still playing on that idea of scarcity. It's still playing on that idea of it's a fun, limited edition scent. But when it's off season, it can then be positioned as vintage, right? Or coming back from the past. And so there's ways that you can use your marketing also to move through some of that stuff.
Yeah, all of that defers the inventory risk. That's great. And I think to Jeremy, or it was Jack that talked about the task force. I think one of the important things to consider when building a task force is this idea, do I have the person in the room with the capacity to solve this problem? And I think, Taylor, to your point, there's a very real probability that for many of us, the volatility associated with demand planning was never this big of a problem. And so it's probable that we don't have the right person. And so finding out that there are endless resources. I see some of them being listed in the chat for people to check out, people offering that there are people that are skilled at thinking through this. And one of those, I think, just showed up fresh out of class. Webb, are you officially available to be reached here?
Well, now I am.
There he is. All right. Welcome, first of all. And then second, I know you have been tasked with and supported tons of people in thinking about building models around this issue. Can you talk to how you're doing some of that work and what you think it looks like to do it well?
It's a really tough question. I think the first sort of variable that you have to consider is whether or not the branding question is bootstrapped or venture-backed. If you're bootstrapped, which tends to be more along the lines of my specialty, you can't bet as heavy on inventory. So you typically play a little bit safer. I can give you sort of an anecdotal experience. I think that's the best way to go here. Early stage with Mizzen, I think we raised $250,000 from friends and family, and we spent $230,000 of that on inventory. They were the worst shirts ever. The first generation of Mizzen. So the fact that we couldn't sell those $230,000 shirts put us in an even deeper hole taught me a little bit of a lesson about, betting on something that perhaps you don't have the ability to fulfill. So for the next go round, we were a little bit more conservative. And as the shirts improved, obviously so did our chances of actually selling them and getting them into wholesale doors.
Yeah, I think to that exact point, one of the things that we fear is this idea that we're going to lose out on revenue. But I will tell you that being sold out is an underrated marketing asset. It really is. Like, you have all sorts of opportunities to correct being sold out. Over purchasing can be death. So with that, Jaime, I want you to talk a little bit about thinking about supply chain. So stepping out of forecasting and thinking about the practical application. I know you have thoughts around in-house versus outsourced and how that gives you flexibility and agility. So how should people think about preparing their supply chain to actually be able to accomplish whatever the forecast requires into the Q4?
Yeah, I would love to step back for a second and speak a bit on the demand and the abundance of inventory after holidays, because it's all relevant here. One strategy too that I think works really well is when you're in the product development phase, you think about, like, what if I am stuck with an abundance of inventory after this is over? And I think it was Taylor who mentioned, can we slap a new label on this? Yes, and I think that comes with a lot of the creation of, let's take deodorant, for example, a fragrance. Let's say we're making a scent that smells like a Christmas tree. Can we relabel that later to be an entirely different scent that's not specific to holiday? So a good way to make use of that extra inventory. Another strategy that worked well with Schmidt's was having a retail partner like TJ Maxx. They'll take anything, and customers will go in there looking for anything. And so that's a great way to offload a lot of that extra supply too. But to the demand planning and thinking about manufacturing, I'm very partial to in-house manufacturing. So where I'm coming from will generally be specific to that approach. But I have worked with co-packers too. Specific to things like limited editions for holidays, when you manufacture in-house, there's so much flexibility in terms of creating these fragrances on the fly. Having the ability to ship in-house too, and put these handwritten notes in your packages, and just fewer touch points overall if you're doing it all in-house. With co-packers, obviously we have the bigger lead times, which can be problematic, especially when planning for holiday. But there's ways to, build up those relationships with your co-packers, which can help put you in a better position, especially in a time that is so competitive. In ways that, I've done that successfully is really just engaging them in the business and bringing them into things like your demand planning, and telling them, like, hey, I'm sitting on this huge forecast, or maybe it's a PO for Target or whatever it is. And then you're getting a commitment from the co-packer to give you the line time rather than giving it to somebody else. Bringing them into your press. You get a big press hit. You send it over to your co-packer. You make them feel like part of your business, and really nurturing that relationship pays off tremendously, especially when you are in a competitive time like right now, because a lot of these co-packers are really, figuring out, like, whose products am I going to make? And a lot of it's relationship based.
So good. So one of the principles I love when thinking about this is stop trying to be right and start trying to figure out how to thrive when you're wrong, right? Like, if you move out of that mindset of trying to create a model that accurately predicts this versus how do I build a system that when I'm wrong, I still win. And I think that's so much more helpful than trying to predict into the amount of variables that we have right now. Awesome. Well, I want to give everybody time. You put together a thoughtful note on sort of a tactical, practical piece of advice there. So we're going to go around, starting, Tracey, with you, because you're the box next to me here. So each of you, give us your best Q4 advice, or at least the one you're willing to publicly share.
Awesome. Well, going back for me, I suppose, if folks really aren't sure what they should be saying or could be saying on their channels to get more customers or to better attract their audience or their following, truly start a customer advisory board. We started it on Facebook. Literally, it was 10 people. Again, it's 100 now. It does not have to be something fancy, but your customers using their words back at them is one of the absolute best ways to get more people exactly like them.
How did you solicit them? Just practically, Tracey.
Email. I mean, we just emailed them and asked. Again, we work in the grief space. Might be easier on our end to say, hey, we would love your insight and advice on, some ads we might put up or some copy we might put out. And honestly, they've created it as like their own community now. It's great.
Did you have to incentivize them coming in, or were they eager to do it?
They're very, very eager to do it.
Great. Love that. Jack, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, so the first one, I think we talked about this earlier in regards to like cutting through all the noise with CPMs going high. So in the past couple of years, we've actually had success doing lead gen campaigns on Facebook ads about 30 days leading up to Black Friday. And so I think that tactically that might be worth testing out, just because you have your email automation stuff set up, then you could hit your ROAS targets. And then second one is just making sure to do a postmortem after this year. We do one every year, and that's really gleaned a lot of good insights that we reuse for the following year. So for instance, last year we learned that like only 10% of our customers were buying between 1 to 5 cartons. And so that influenced our discount strategy for Black Friday to where we did like a tiered discount that only started at 6 cartons up to incentivize people to make a larger order size.
Increase the gross dollars in your pocket. I like it. All right, Marjorie.
Yeah, so we didn't really get into it a lot today, but the takeaway I want to leave people with is I would encourage you to think of holiday as more than just promotions, right? Like it gets this rep that it's all about sales and discounts. And, while those can be used strategically and sometimes cautiously to build loyalty with some of your owned lists, how do you use things like novelty and seasonal and limited edition products, or even like, plus ones, a small travel bag that comes with your purchase? How do you use some of those things to get new customers in a way that's probably a lot more sustainable and loyal to the brand in the long term? Also, Taylor, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that Native has had a lot of success with Pinterest as well. So Tracey and I might need to do another webinar on that one.
Hey, sign me up. I'm customer number 1 for that webinar. But love that. And one of the interesting things that we're going to be releasing in our upcoming holiday stuff is an analysis of LTV by customer cohort related to Black Friday, Cyber Monday purchasers versus gifting purchasers versus year-round purchasers, and how those compare in value, because they're often very different people. So interesting considerations in that too. All right, Jaime, what do you have to leave us with?
This isn't something we got into too much either, but just having different products for different channels. I just really encourage people not to be afraid to go down different channels due to price points or perceptions around, limitations with cost of goods. There's creative ways to get around it. So just keep an open mind, and maybe that means a new product line. Happy to talk more about that on one-on-one if anybody's interested.
Where could they find you if they were, Jaime?
I think Twitter is a good place to start. It's just Jaime Schmidt. Jaime Schmidt.
Awesome. All right, Jeremy. What do you have to leave all of the aspiring membership business operators out there with?
Don't do it. It's an awful business. Terrible. Sorry if I missed something. I live in Park City, Utah, and there was a mouse in the house, so I had to go find it and let it out. So that was unique. But so my note is primarily relevant for brands that are kind of looking to scale, and that's not everyone. Just wanted to say it's perfectly fine if you're trying to maintain, but if you are trying to scale, I think you really have to be very realistic. DTC is not an easy business, and I think a lot of the stuff that you did early on no longer works the bigger you get. So I think the 2 main things I would just say are you have to be objective and realistic with yourself, and very quantitative. So I highly recommend investing in reporting early on. Developing a kind of both productized and data-driven competency internally in your team, and dial in the metrics that really matter for you and figure those out sooner than later. Because I think if you don't keep an eye on it, it can really come to bite you later. And then I think secondly, look at your cohort data. So this is something that I think far too many brands kind of overlook early on. But I think things that seem obvious at first. So let's say you're, let's say your product costs $30, you're selling it for $100, and you're acquiring at like 20 or whatever it is. That might be great in your first early cohorts, but that could really grow very quickly. And also on the LTV side, I think far too many brands kind of overlook the payback period. So you don't want a LTV to CAC, ratio that's like too far out there. So I know it's kind of a little nitty gritty, but I do think that those are things that would recommend anyone and everyone to try to invest in.
And you're singing our song, cohort specific LTV data by first product purchase, understanding return rates, understanding the value of those customers by their different behaviors is so often the unlock to continuing to find scale, is finding those pockets of additional profitability that really do put better net dollars in your pocket than just the front end ROAS. So huge. Love that. All right, Mr. Cohen, what do you have?
My big thing I want people to really think hard about is over-investing in acquisition now, but also really think about how you're planning for your inventory and your supply going into the holiday season. Something that not a lot of people I think really know. One of my very good friends is the men's fashion director for a very large retailer. And what he was explaining to me is in Q2, when all the stores basically shut down, they had no ability to sell through anything. So they're sitting on a stockpile of inventory and they were not generating cash flow that they needed to both buy new inventory and settle existing liabilities like rent and debts and whatever. And so that puts huge pressure on those businesses to make Q4 really, really big. As a result, they need to overinvest in advertising to make up for that revenue. But the problem that they have, and this is for brands that either sell through stores or stores themselves, their timeline for getting inventory for when they need it is like anywhere from 3 to 9 months, depending on what it is. For apparel, it's usually about 6 months. So if you go 6 months back from November, that's basically last month that they need to make the decisions of how much inventory they need to hold. And they weren't even able to sell through their Q2 inventory to TJ Maxx and the likes, as Jaime mentioned. So retailers, physical retailers and brands that sell through them are in a really tough spot trying to predict what they're going to need in order to make sure they sell through to get enough revenue. And so what's going to end up happening is they're going to overinvest in promotions and in advertising even earlier than we've been talking about. And I predict there's actually going to be a huge inventory shortage in physical locations before Black Friday even hits. And consumers are going to come flying online trying to find solutions. So I really, 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 really overinvest in acquisition now and be prepared to fulfill that demand when it comes through and make sure that you can be there for people when they're looking for something to buy and they can't get it in their local store.
He's the man with the crystal ball. We appreciate it, Jake. Thank you. Jessica.
Yeah, of course. So, I'm going to say something that might be a little bit of an unpopular opinion, but I actually really don't think people's behaviors have changed that much. I don't know what to tell people. Like people just shopped in a different way. And obviously that was explosive and so important for D2C and e-commerce. But at the end of the day, they just shop for different things in a different way than maybe they were used to. So a lot of the different behavior like that humans are going to display during holiday is going to be very similar. It's just going to be in a different way of them getting their things. And the way that I say that is that there are not going to all of a sudden be a bunch of people who go, gee, I want to plan out every little bit of my shopping because I have all this extra time in quarantine. It's not going to happen. You're going to have last minute shoppers who still but who would have otherwise gone to a store, just driven on over, all of a sudden go, oh my gosh, I have no way to give this gift to someone and it's Christmas tomorrow. That's what's happening. And so with that, you have to prepare your business. And so I think that there's obviously the different digital things you can do, digital gift cards, having nice designs, pay a designer, have someone on staff really make designs that make people go, wow, this is something that I can send. Because at least with one behavior shift is that people are used to things more virtual and getting digital gift cards now. And they would like a little design, something that makes it fun, makes you stand out. Really also then I would say that for those that are able to, and what I kind of thought about during the whole conversation, not only are the big brands going to be boxing everyone out, guess what? These big D2Cs, they're going to be priced out of their TV ads. Okay. They're going to be priced out by the big brands for their TV ads. Guess where they're putting their money? They're putting it in digital. So we're up against the big brands for digital and the big D2Cs that have all this money that they would do for TV, because there's barely inventory. There's barely inventory because there's barely going to be TV shows that are available. Not as much sports. It's just kind of like a perfect storm. So when that happens, what you have to keep in mind is that there's all that extra competition. What can you do to make sure that you're still there for like this sort of consumer that's going to be in front of you? And the other thing that you can, I'd implore people to consider, if there's a D2C that maybe has better distribution than you, that you think could be able to compete a little bit more in the shipping wars, could get in that last minute sort of window, last day to ship sort of situation, co-market with them. Figure out if that you can get certain things into their warehouses ahead of time and see if it makes sense. Obviously, don't do it with some random brand, but if there's some alignment, something that's interesting, a play off of your brand where they're maybe the other side of the coin, go for it and let them take on the burden of distribution that they already have in place and let your D2C grow. But really just know that like the shifts in behavior aren't deep enough that it won't change, that we're going to have a good portion of shoppers going, oh, wow, I need to get mom a gift. And here I am.
That's super interesting. So if you think about the sort of the classic December 19th, last day to ship for standard delivery, like there's a really good chance that's way earlier this year. But while simultaneously the behavior is not going to change, I'm not going to plan any better just because USPS isn't working well. So there's all sorts of fun ways to play that too. Imagine like a brand that has an ice cream truck in their highest populated city on December 22nd, and they're funneling orders to a, on location delivery, filming it, showing it. Like there are ways in which like if we are aware of this opportunity, we can make something of it. And I think it's a great point. Great point. Taylor, Jake, did you have your pen in the air to add something real fast? Or are you just
preach? This shit's just so spot on.
Yeah. Okay, cool. That's what I figured. All right. Mr. Sicard, what do you have for us?
Yeah. So I have two things. First one is start prospecting yesterday. If you don't already have a large email or SMS list, start building it. If you're late to one or the other, focus on the one that you're good at right now and start building the other one, but focus on what you have already, because we're August already. It feels like this is spring, but it's August. So buckle in, because it's going to be a crazy couple of weeks. Depending on how big or robust your list is, look at doing partnerships with other brands. I feel like I'm always coming after Jessica and kind of building off of what she started, but look at doing a giveaway campaign with a like-minded brand and giveaway products, share that email list. Tons of great tools out there to do that with. And now is the best time to start doing that. And second part would be, owning a portfolio and having multiple businesses. Data is so important. Understand who your customers are, but not just as a psychographic or demographic profile. Which of your customers needs a discount code to shop? Which ones are buying for themselves versus as gifts? For me, I know exactly who in my cohort of customers, which ones are purchasing for themselves, which are purchasing as gifts. I've asked them questions. I've asked when they buy for gifts, what gift this is for, whether it's for Christmas or it's for birthdays or Valentine's Day. So I can already kind of put together customer tags as to who they're buying things for. So I then know that, this person has a spouse, or this person, really loves giving their parents these types of items around this time of the year. It must be their anniversary. So the more information you have about your customers, the better it is. And speak to them differently. Don't give everyone that same email. Don't give everyone the same offer. Some people are very incentivized by discounts. Others might want the first crack at getting the holiday product before it sells out. So give people what they want and what they need and what's going to make them convert most efficiently.
Love it. Thank you, Taylor. One of the things that I think is when we think about assets that we own, so prospecting to get emails, build your SMS list, organic search ranking is owned audience. Okay. So if you think of key terms that drive free traffic into your site, which is what email and SMS does, your ability to move from position 4 to position 2 represents access to more owned audience that you don't have to pay for come holiday. So it's another channel that we don't often think of in the same way as an owned audience asset, but it functions in a very similar mechanism. So I would add that to email, SMS, and organic traffic relative to your core sets of keywords and ones that might matter in holiday. So just to add that on top of what you're saying, Taylor, it's good. All right, Marco, what do you want to leave us with? Just wanted to leave us. All right, Webb, bring us home.
Yes. Okay. So I'm concerned about November, as I've previously written, and I think that investing in owned audience would be probably the best use of a lot of brands' time right now. I think one of the practical ways that I would go about doing that is I would devote some spend to probably a platform or media source like Morning Brew or maybe The Hustle, companies with millions of subscribers, to sort of siphon off some of their potential subscribers to your own email lists. I know that their ad buys are probably in the $10,000 to $20,000 range, and hopefully you can net 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 great folks that convert later on. Those are the types of ideas that I'm trying to experiment with right now for a few companies that I'm involved with, and hopefully I have some brighter ideas before the time comes.
That's great. Awesome, everybody. I'm so appreciative of all of your time. We had a dress rehearsal, so these people have committed a bunch of time and energy here for all of you. Just real quickly, we're going to go around in the same way Jamie did and just tell us where we can follow you. Tell us the best place to reach you, and then we'll sign off. So Tracey, where can people follow you?
Twitter, Trey Swall.
There you go. You drop that in the chat, Tracey. Jack, how about you?
Twitter, I think it's @JV Meredith.
Awesome. Marjorie?
Also Twitter, it's Marjorie Becca.
I'm noticing a theme. Mr. Sicard?
Sorry, I couldn't find the mute button there. Also, Twitter is probably best. It's @TaylorSicard.
Come on, who's going to be my first TikTok? Jessica, where should we follow you?
I actually do have a TikTok. I've been on, I was on Musical.ly back in 2015, but no one needs to find that. But no, you can, IG's good, or Twitter. It's the same handle. It's @MCGlory. I'll drop it in the chat.
Awesome. Jake, just Klaviyo.com for you or what?
Actually, physical mail is great. I'm kidding. Twitter, you can find me, JFCCOHEN. I'll post it. And if you want to have a direct conversation aside from DMs, you can email me. It's jake.cohen@klaviyo.com.
Awesome. Jeremy?
I actually like email a lot, so I'm just jeremy@italic.com. Or if you do have Twitter, I'm JJEREMYCA. Just basically my name with an extra J in front.
Cool. Thanks. Jamie, you gave it to us once. One more time. Where can we follow you?
Jaime Schmidt, JAIME Schmidt on Twitter.
All right. And Webb, could you spell it out for us? Because it's a lot of letters. How do we follow you? Where are you?
Just @Webb, WEB on Twitter. I'll try to answer you politely. I'm still working on that.
Awesome. Hey, thank you to everybody for showing up. Replays are going out. Endless amounts of follow-up content to come. Follow every one of these people. They're brilliant. The access that you have to minds like this on Twitter, it's never been a better time in human history to build a business because you have direct access to incredible minds like this. I really believe that. So appreciate every one of you for showing up. Thanks for continuing to engage. Good luck in Q4. It's going to be wild. Stay tuned. Thanks, everybody.